Hello, everybody. We're all done with the book of Joshua. No, just kidding. I was asked a question about when it says, to this very day, you can see this, or this is the name of the place. And people wonder, are those places still evident in the land of Israel? Many of them are. And we have a fabulous tour guide that we've used at our synagogue over the last 20 years for all of our tours. Her name is Julie Barretts. And she works for Ayala Tours, and I forget the Israeli company that's part of that. But she has done all our tours, and she wrote a book several years ago. It's a fabulous book. It's called The Bible on Location, Off the Beaten Path in Ancient and Modern Israel. And every chapter is another place in Israel where we've gone with her, and we sit down on the mountain and look out, and this is where David fought Goliath, and here is where David saw Bathsheba on the roof, and over here is where Abraham did this. And it's a wonderful book. I mean, even if you haven't been to Israel, but especially if you have been to Israel. And so I recommend it highly. It's called The Bible on Location. It's on Amazon. And I just went on today. I think they're selling some copies for like $12, which is a real bargain. Okay, good. So let's go to chapter 8 and do a few verses, and then save the last two chapters for next week.
So we have a reading assignment in between?
No, you don't have to. I mean, I told you there'd be no homework, but if you want to, and by the way, I think we've covered a lot of the materials that we have here, and if there's some questions you have on any of the materials, we had Midrash, we talked about that for a while. I recommend you read that article. Anything you can do, I can do better. We've been doing that all along, and then the map has been really helpful as well. Okay, so let's keep going here and see if we get anywhere else on the map, because I know we can get up to Shechem, but I think it may be the end of this. This is a very long chapter, yes. Okay, so chapter 8. Who would like to read there?
The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be frightened or dismayed. Take all the fighting troops with you. Go and march against Ai. See, I will deliver the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land into your hands. You shall treat Ai and her king as you treated Jericho and her king. However, you may take the spoil and the cattle as booty for yourselves. Now set an ambush against the city behind it."
Okay, so here's the continuation of that plan that was interrupted by the punishment of Achan, right? And it was necessary to root that out before he went on, and now God assures them that he will be with them again, right? It's going to be just like Jericho.
And they can have the booty this time.
And this time they can have the booty.
I don't buy it. I'm
Yes?
the one who just did this horrible, drawn-out, protracted ceremonial punishment and vetting now says, "Don't worry, don't be dismayed." I'm thinking it's exactly what Joshua said. What are you going to do about your reputation now?
Yeah, because in our eyes, God's reputation is ruined in some ways, but this is what happens to us in life when we get disappointed with our expectations of what God are. But for them, the expectation, this is, of course, not necessarily what God did. It's what the writers imagined God to be.
But there must have been no underlying foundational principle into taking the booty. It was, you violated my word. There I said you can't do it. Here I say you can.
I'm glad you raised that, because that was another question I wanted to throw out and ask you. What could that also be? What could that be on the part of God?
It's like
changing his mind.
strike the rock, don't strike the rock.
Okay, or what else?
Compromise.
A compromise? Well, what leads to compromise? A recognition of the other person's argument or behavior or weakness. Isn't that, in a sense, by God saying you can have the booty this time, saying, I expected way too much. And human nature is a constant. And if I'm going to be God and you're going to be humans and we're going to have this covenant, and if you're going to inhabit the world, then I have to understand that you're humans. You're not going to be perfect. You can't always live up to those standards. When the world was being created, the Midrash says, God thought about creating the world, and he said to the angels, now, should I create the world? I'd like to create the world by the standard of justice, the standard of justice. I'm going to make a world that's totally just. And the angels said to God, you can't do that. And God says, well, why can't I do that? Angels, because you're creating human beings. And human beings will never be able to live up to your standard of justice, day in and day out all the time, because they're human beings. So if you're going to make the world a standard of justice, don't even make it, because it'll be a matter of moments before you destroy the world when people do things wrong. That's going to happen. And God said to the angels, okay, I think I'm going to create the world with the standard of mercy, of forgiveness. And the angel says, oh, you can't do that either. And God said, why not? Because if people know that you're just going to be merciful and forgiving and they'll get away with anything, imagine what kind of a world of lawlessness that will be and how people will treat each other. God said, okay. And God thought for a second and says, I want you to bring me a crystal bowl, fine crystal, thin, beautiful, sparkling crystal. Bring me a bowl. So they bring God a bowl. He says, now I want you to bring me a pitcher of ice cold water. And they bring God a pitcher of ice cold water. And God said, all right, I'm going to pour this ice cold water into this crystal pitcher. And the angel says, no, don't do that. And God said, why not? Because it'll crack. It'll crack it, it'll destroy it, and it won't do what it's supposed to. It won't hold the water. God said, all right, bring me a pitcher of boiling hot water. And they said, okay. And God says, I'm going to pour this boiling hot water in the bowl. And they said, no, don't do that. Why? Same thing will happen. It'll crack from the heat. God said, okay, watch me. And God takes the pitcher of ice cold water and the pitcher of boiling hot water, and God pours them together. And as they hit the crystal bowl doesn't crack because the one neutralizes the other, the heat and the cold. And the angel said, wow. And God said, that's what I'm going to do with the creation of the world. You're right. If I do just with the ice cold justice, the world will crack and it won't be able to exist. If I only use mercy, it'll get so hot, and how people treat each other is going to be so mercurial that it'll crack as well. I'm going to pour justice and mercy together, weave them together, and create a world that has both justice and mercy, and that will allow the world to exist. So maybe in this reconsideration, and God saying, take the booty now, recognizing that people can't resist that, especially they're going in there and they're doing all this work and it's right there in front of them. So maybe that's what God is doing. I don't know. That's just
doesn't make sense.
Doesn't it? Not everything makes sense. Okay.
The story is great.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm glad.
In this case, it doesn't make sense because the mercurial act of killing the guy and
his family
and his animals and everything else, and then saying, oh well, I got to somehow balance that out, with the hot water of now you can go take everything. I mean, it doesn't really wash.
But if the violation is not so much that you took the booty, but you
didn't listen.
do as I said, kind of like Aaron's
Well, that's
sons.
different.
Right.
That's what you were saying.
Right. Like Aaron's sons in last week's Torah portion.
Right. You did not obey me, therefore I killed you.
Because
Now,
I'm the
learned your
father
lesson,
parent.
Now you can go steal whatever you want.
God is
Does he let
God
him
is
keep the
developing
booty every
also.
time?
What's
then?
that?
Does he let him keep the booty every time after that? Or?
I don't know. We'll have to keep reading to find out. But no, listen, I totally agree with you. When I tell you this stuff, I'm not being a literalist or fundamentalist. And what I've suggested from the first week is that our approach to Bible has to be an approach to what are the deeper messages. Could it be a story of hyperbole, and in order to make a point? And the point is if you're in a covenant and you have a deal, you're a lawyer, you have a contract, you got to keep your part of the contract. And when you break part of the contract, there's consequences, right? You can extend it there.
I read the news, I thought that had disappeared.
Yes, you're right. I think we all share that fear. Yes. It's scary.
There's another explanation. God said you can't keep the booty They sent the 3,000 up,
right?
and they didn't succeed.
Right. Now they're going to do the plan.
So now God says, well, maybe we need some incentive. I was just saying, if you remember, like Revolutionary War times, the pirates in the Mediterranean, the United States franchised these privateers to go out
Right.
to destroy the enemy and all this stuff. Well, their incentive was they captured
get to
an
keep what
enemy
they get.
ship. Right.
What do we get paid for this? Whatever you find.
Right. So here, he
Maybe.
didn't let them have the booty. The 3,000 got wiped. So now he's going to send the rest of them, but he's going to give them the incentive.
Well, 3,000 didn't get killed.
Just 36.
No, but they weren't successful.
No, no, they weren't. They were testing it out, and here's the rest of the story.
Right.
The rest of the story is now the people at Ai are going to come out.
Right. But we're
The
gonna
ambush
give you-
behind is going to come in.
But we're going to give you. But we're going to give you a reward.
That's interesting and a pretty cold view, isn't it? That you know, God says, hey, you didn't succeed in what you were supposed to do, and then you go and steal the stuff. You're not going to get away with that.
You got to do your job in order to get
You
paid.
want the prize, you got to.
You got to do your job if you want to get paid.
Didn't
Right.
he steal the
Cold-
stuff first?
cold God.
He stole the stuff first, though, not after.
He stole
Yes,
the stuff
right.
first before the.
Well, then, no. This is the stuff they stole in Jericho.
Oh.
This was the stuff from Jericho. They weren't supposed to do it.
So are you so cynical?
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah, that was a week that you missed.
And we didn't watch the video.
That's okay.
You too.
Yes. Now you should watch the videos because you never know what kind of stories are going to be on there. You know.
So why didn't, I mean, if God's now plotting this ambush
Yeah.
from the backside, why did he do that to begin with?
God
Good
wasn't
question.
with them the first time. That's the point.
Yeah, because God was upset about Jericho.
Yeah.
God was upset about Jericho.
Okay.
This is the second time into Ai now, right?
Yeah. Because Achan had sinned, there's no, God's presence wasn't there to inspire this idea.
But they didn't have God's blessing because God was still angry that they didn't obey His orders in Jericho. Not they, but Achan. Achan. Okay. All right, and so where are we? Who would like to read now? Verse 3, yeah. Go ahead.
Joshua and all the fighting troops prepared for the march on Ai. Joshua chose 30,000 men, valiant warriors, and sent them ahead by night. He instructed them as follows. Mind, you are to lie in ambush behind the city. Don't stay too far from the city, and all of you be on the alert. I and all the troops with me will approach the city, and when they come out against us, as they did the first time, we will flee from them. They will come rushing after us until we have drawn them away from the city. They will think, they are fleeing from us, the same as last time. But while we are fleeing before them, you will dash out from your ambush and seize the city, and the Lord your God will deliver it into your hands. And when you take the city, set it on fire. Do as the Lord has commanded. Mind, I have given you your orders.
All right, so maybe the first attack of Ai served two purposes. Number one, it was a way to punish the Israelites for not stopping Achan from doing what he did, and then leading to his death as well. And the other was that it was part of the military plan. You send this first wave, and Ai sees what you do, and you repeat it, but this time you have a different backup system. You have a different plan B. So it's a bait, sort of a bait and switch. They baited them, and now they come back and they do the same thing, but this time they know what Ai is going to do, and so they know how to plan to do this. So it could be that, what does it mean that God is with you? God is with us because we have a good military plan. And when the Air France plane was captured July 4th, 1976, you all remember that? At Entebbe, and it was taken to Entebbe, and the Israelis went and captured it. It was like a miraculous kind of operation, but there's an explanation for everything that they did.
Meticulously planned.
It was meticulously planned because the conditions were perfect. Number one, the Israelis had built that airport in Entebbe. That was in the days when they helped the African countries, which they're now doing again, some of them. And so they knew the layout of the airport. You also had the technology of Israel to be able to fly literally under the radar. They knew the terrain. They knew how to get down there without being discovered over Egypt and Libya. And And they planned it. I mean, in Israel, they were out flying their planes around a couple days before just to plan how they were going to do it. And it was so strategized. They had a limousine, they had a Mercedes that was exactly the same as Idi Amin's. So, and they drove out there pretending to be Idi Amin so that people wouldn't be alarmed. The terrorists would think, oh, here comes Idi Amin. They were able to fly the plane and turn the engines off and land it. It was just an amazing operation. But there's already been several movies and books about it, and it's described as a miracle, right? So what is a miracle? What is it that God's presence is with us? Does it mean we use our sense that God gave us, our brains that God gave us? We use our hearts and how we deal with other people? Does that mean God is with us? It's the question of how we perceive God, whether we perceive God the way we did when we were 5 years old, or as adults who grown up with lots of disappointments in our life and had losses and had things where we get angry at God, or just like looking at what God did. Yeah, what a cruel thing, but maybe this is just a hyperbole, a metaphor for us to understand all these kinds of theologies.
I think at this point God is developing also.
In our perception, according to Judaism, God doesn't ever develop. God is constant. God was, God is, and God will be.
God will be, but
Hu haya, hu hovev, hu yihya.
but we see him changing.
Because we change. Yeah. Why do we read the Torah every year? It's the same book. I don't know about you, but every year I read it, I see different things in it. And that's not because the Torah is any different. It's because I am, and my life experience is different. And I see things I never saw before, and I hope you do too. And I have to bring this to a close for tonight. But we're going to meet one more next week. Thank you for the refreshments. That was very, very nice. Very, very nice. And we'll be here again next week.
Have a good